Ryan, are we recording?
Yes, we are.
Okay, we're recording this, just so you all know. That's good. We'll be recording each of the three forums, and we're going to publish them all at the end after all three of them have been done. Seems to be the fairest way to do it. So tonight you're going to hear from 3 of the 11 Democratic candidates who want to kick Mike Lawler out of Congress. You're going to hear from 4 more next Thursday, a week from tomorrow night, June 5th, in Yorktown. You're going to hear from the last group of 4 a week after that, on Thursday the 12th in Sleepy Hollow. That way, you'll be able to hear all of them. And of course, all of them will be done on Zoom too. So there's an opportunity for you to meet all of the candidates here. I want to thank Mike Minard, who's the chair of the Bedford Town Committee, and will be your moderator for our discussion this evening. I want to thank Brian Goodman, who's operating on Zoom, and I want to thank the chair of our county party, Suzanne Berger, who's been very supportive and collaborative in this process. So I'd like to ask Suzanne to say a couple of words.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Bruce. I'm proud to be a sponsor of this event and the 2 events coming, because we want to introduce the candidate field to the Democrats in the county, and particularly to our county committee members who ultimately will likely be voting to endorse one of the candidates as we move forward in time. So I'm glad to see you all here today. We have a few moments ago 62 people on our Zoom. As Bruce said, we are recording it, and we'll make the recordings available when all 3 sessions have been completed. If you want a recording, you can either email the questions email on the bottom of the link, or you can reach out to Michael, who is the host today, and we want to thank Michael for making arrangements for this lovely space. This is an extremely important seat. It can be a pickup, and it should be a pickup, and that means we have to find a candidate that can get the most amount of votes in the 17th congressional district. So we should be listening tonight and in the future as we go forward with that in mind. Michael will talk about the format and so forth when I turn the mic over to him. But my job really is to welcome you. I'm going to sit and listen, and I'm happy to meet and talk to those of you whom I don't know at the end of this session. We're supposed to go an hour and a half. Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Suzanne. That's your Suzanne. Democratic Party. Michael will say this again later on, but when we get to questions, we're going to ask the questions come from district leaders, and that you come up to this microphone, make a line if there's enough of you who want to ask questions, and do that. But right now, Michael, it's all yours.
Well, actually, I think we're going to start off with a pledge of allegiance. We'll start off with statements from each of the candidates, and we randomly generated the order. We hope you like this order. Brian, who is first?
It's going to be John.
John, here we go.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for coming, and thank you to the committees for putting this on. My name is John Sullivan, and I'm running for Congress because I know exactly who Donald Trump is and what he's doing to this country. I'm also a dad, a husband, and a cancer survivor, and until recently, I spent almost 17 years in the FBI, where I swore an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. Working in the FBI, I had the opportunity to lead teams who took on drug traffickers, gangs, criminal organizations, Russian spies, terrorists, and insurrectionists, So believe me, when I say I know a criminal and dictator like this one, I'm not kidding. And we've got one in the White House. Because Donald Trump's corruption knows no bounds and his attack on our democracy knows no limits. When we look at what's going on right now in the country, we have to look and say, is this exactly what we wanted? Mike Lawler is doing everything possible to enable the MAGA agenda. Working in the FBI and serving this country has been one of the greatest honors of my life. But now I am in this race because when I saw what they did to go after our economy, tanking it, going after our law enforcement and selling us out to the highest bidder, I realized that families like the one I grew up in are the ones that are suffering. Both of my parents were public servants. My mom worked 2 jobs just to give us a better life, and I'm the first person in my family to go to college and get a 4-year degree. And it's not because I'm the first one who wanted to go, but I'm the first one who, thanks to student loans and a little bit of savings, was able to go. And I'm really glad I did, because that's where freshman year I met my now husband. And we are the proud parents of a 6-year-old son who we're raising right here where my husband was raised. Working in the FBI, I went overseas to Israel and I served in Africa, but I also served here in New York and in Washington, DC. And you don't always get the chance of choice of where you want to serve when you're in the FBI. But when we could choose where we wanted to live, we chose the Hudson Valley. So I'm running to stop the assault on our democracy. I'm running to be a voice for all of those who recently, just as of last week, had Mike Lawler vote on that big bad bill going after their Medicaid and their healthcare. I'm running because this democracy now needs to be protected from the guy in the White House and politicians like Mike Lawler, who is phony and masquerades as moderate while he enables that MAGA agenda. So now is not a time to sit back. It is a time to fight, and I thank you so much and look forward to hearing more of your questions.
Beth?
John, thank you for your service very much. Hi, everybody. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. I'm Beth Davidson. I'm a mom with 2 kids in public school. I'm a 2-time cancer survivor, and I'm a Rockland County legislator who spent nearly a decade fighting for this community that I've called home for 20 years. We're all here tonight because our country is in crisis. We've got Donald Trump 2.0 back and worse than ever, threatening to deport citizens, violating Supreme Court orders, and accepting a $400 million jet from the chief funders of Hamas. We've got billionaires like Elon Musk giving themselves tax breaks on the backs of working people. And we've got Mike Lawler doing whatever Donald Trump and Elon Musk tell him to do while pretending to be a model. Mike Lawler sold out our community. He defunded Medicaid, food stamps, Planned Parenthood. He failed to keep his main campaign promise by keeping the SALT cap in place. He had 2 constituents dragged out of his town hall because he was afraid to answer questions. Yet, despite this extreme record, Mike Lawler has won here twice in a big way. Why? Because he has deep roots in this community and he knows how to campaign here. Well, I've got news for Mike Lawler. I know this community just as well as he does, and unlike him, I actually fight for it. When Donald Trump was first elected, I stepped up to run for the school board. I won to fight for our kids and our families. Then when a purple seat opened up on the county legislature, I stepped up again, but this time not for myself. I recruited and led a slate of Democratic candidates to win the first Democratic supermajority in Rockland County history. Right in Mike Lawler's backyard. I cut taxes, fully funded law enforcement, and passed gun safety legislation, all under a Republican county executive. I can get that done in Rockland. There's no reason we can't get that done in Washington. Let's be clear, this seat is hard to win. It takes deep roots in this community. It takes a broad coalition. And it takes someone who knows how to stand up and fight and win in the Hudson Valley. We don't flip this seat unless we win Rockland and drive up our numbers in Westchester, Putnam, and Douglas. And our campaign is already well on its way. I'm proud to have more than 30 endorsements from every corner of my community, from elected officials and Democratic Party leaders, and I've raised over $500,000 in just 6 weeks. I've spent the last 2 decades fighting for this community, and I'm ready to take that fight to Washington. Thank you very much.
I'm Nick Porfilio, and my family is the American dream. My grandfather left behind a farm in Italy and came to this country looking for a better life. He settled in the Bronx and sold fruit at Hunts Point Market. My grandmother was a cafeteria worker and a member of the DC 37 union. My parents did better. My mom was a teacher's aide in the public schools in the Bronx and a member of the UFT. My father was a college graduate who sold cars and was a Home Depot sales clerk. Now my generation has done better still. My 2 sisters and I are all blessed to be homeowners. They are both teachers and members of the UFT. My brother-in-law works in the Metro North and is a member of ACRE. And I'm fortunate enough to be a graduate of Stanford and Harvard, have been a Clinton for Senator Hillary Clinton, become an electrical engineer, earn my MBA, work on Wall Street, and now run for Congress. But everything we have is because of this amazing country led by democratic policies over the past 100 years. Strong unions, affordable education, accessible home ownership, government-backed small business loans, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and a host of other government programs that have lifted up entire generations and given us opportunities previous generations couldn't even imagine. So I get really pissed when I see a bunch of billionaires and still in Republicans destroying these very programs that my family and families just like mine rely on, all while giving tax cuts to the wealthiest few, making sure the people on top stay on top. But opportunities mean nothing if we're not safe. In 2013, while in New Orleans for a friend's wedding, I survived a mass shooting. At a Mother's Day parade, a gunman walked up to a small crowd and fired indiscriminately into it, shooting 19 people, including the person standing next to me. It was all over in 60 seconds, yet over a decade later, I still have nightmares. The gunman was a felon who shouldn't have had access to a gun. Enough is enough. We need to make sure that people who shouldn't have guns don't have guns. I'm Nick Porfilio, thank you.
We'll now have 2-minute responses. Don't really have to fill up those 2 minutes. We'll start with Nick, but we'd like to hear from everyone. Our congressional district is comprised of many diverse cities, towns, villages, and hamlets. Please share your ties to one or more of these communities and what you see as one or two of the most pressing issues they face. Nick?
Yes. So I am a new resident of the district. I moved a few months ago. I am in Pleasantville. And my entire family lives in Westchester. And you know, I grew up in a neighboring district. I grew up in the Bronx. And so we have strong ties to the area, if not necessarily the exact district. What I found is when I've been speaking to voters over the past few months, and even, you know, people I know, my parents, the number one issue that they continue to say is an issue is the economy.
And I'm the business-oriented candidate who's uniquely qualified to solve this #1 issue. So I'll just tell you a little bit more about my parents. They are the perfect Democrats on paper, and they vote every election because they see it as their civic duty. But I was stunned last year in October when they told me that they weren't going to vote. My mother told me, we've worked our entire lives, and now in retirement, we can't pay our bills. And it's only gotten worse over the past few years. The good news is they can be convinced. We just need to make sure we have the right people solving the right problem, because we've had great candidates over the past few years, but they just weren't the right people to solve what voters were telling us was the problem. With my story, my background, holding an MBA and having worked on Wall Street for many years, all from the best institutions in the world, and my decades of experience as a small business owner, I'm best positioned and uniquely qualified to solve this #1 issue and lead an economy first agenda. Thank you.
Beth?
I'm so lucky to have lived in Nyack, beautiful Nyack, New York, for the last 20 years. My husband and I actually first came to Nyack to look at a venue for our wedding, and we fell in love right away with the bustling downtown and the beautiful waterfront and neighbors who said hi to each other, and decided right then and there that that's where we would make our home. It's where we're raising our children. My daughter Josie is in the audience tonight, in Nyack public schools. And it's where I chose to also take up public service, serving first on the school board and then on the Rockland County Legislature. I've served in a number of nonprofits in Rockland, from Leadership Rockland to I've volunteered with Moms Command Action for Gun Sense in America. Very important issue to me as well. I served on the board of the SOAR Mentorship Program and the Children's Shakespeare Theater, where Josie is a proud fan. And I'm also so lucky to belong to a wonderful synagogue community in Westchester, Beit Am Shalom, where I served on the board and started a number of programs for children and young families. And look, we face a lot of the same problems, and that's what I've been tackling in my time in public service, both on the Nyack School Board, where I fought to make sure every child had equal access to the opportunities they deserved, and where every family had the support they needed, particularly during the COVID pandemic. And here in Westchester, we also do suffer from a lot of the same problems we do in terms of clean water, affordability, the housing crisis, which I'm currently working to address as vice chair of our new housing committee on the Rockland County Legislature, which we never had before we won our supermajority. So these are things I'm focused on every day to help lift up the Hudson Valley and make sure it endures. Children I'll also say that gun safety is a problem on both sides of the river. 3 days before I was sworn in, there was actually a murder-suicide in my district. And folks said, maybe it's not the right time to go out with my campaign promise, which was to pass a gun safety bill. I said, that's exactly the right time. And I went out, and 6 months later, I passed with a unanimous vote. A law requiring having a firearm in the home be posted in every gun store in Rockland County. And that's the kind of, and the county executive, Republican county executive signed it the next day. Those are the kind of collaborative results that I can deliver in Washington.
John Sullivan.
No, well, thank you. Beth and I think both of us have some wedding origin stories a little bit. As I mentioned, my husband grew up here in Westchester, but when we were looking for a venue of where to get married, we were living in New York and trying to find the right place, and we actually ended up in Chappaqua. And that was the plan. I was working in the FBI, he was working at Macy's corporate offices, and the plan was to settle here. And as we were about to put in some offers on a house, I got a call from the FBI saying you're going to Tel Aviv, Israel for the next 3 years. So luckily that offer had not been put down just yet. The plan was to come back after that. This is where our families are. My family is in New Jersey, his family, Westchester, for multiple generations. But after being in Israel, my husband got a job working at USAID. And we were sent to Washington, where I was leading the criminal investigations for the FBI, primarily looking at transnational organized crime. So our goal has always been to get back to this area. We came back as fast as we could. As soon as I saw what Donald Trump was doing, because I've worked under 1.0 and 2.0, and saw all of the chaos and how he was making our communities less safe, we knew we had to get back and do what we could to speak out and protect our communities. I think a lot of the issues that are affecting our district as a whole have been mentioned, but when I go around and talk to people, they say the chaos has to stop. And I think that really embodies a lot of things, from economic chaos to what we're talking about now with public safety and concern. You know, I had the opportunity just a week or two ago to go to Connecticut and sit with the Connecticut Against Gun Violence group for their annual meeting, where survivors from Sandy Hook got up and spoke now in college about what that experience meant to them. So being in the law enforcement world, having been someone who shot those weapons of war that we talk about, they should never be on the streets. This community should be safe for all kids. When I grew up, you came in when the streetlights went on, and your parents weren't looking for you all hours of the day and night. But now with my son being 6 years old and in a public school, you have to be concerned about those things, because gun violence is so prevalent. So I think when we look at the chaos, we have to be thinking about both the economic security and the public safety.
Thank you. What do you see as your path to victory in this race? What are Mike Lawler's weaknesses? How will you win over his voters from the last time? And perhaps most importantly, how will you raise the necessary funds? I think we'll start with Beth this time and mix it up.
Thank you very much. Well, I really appreciate that question. And I'll just say that looking at the results from the last two elections, where Rockland County was where this race was lost, the Jewish woman from Rockland is pretty much Mike Lawler's worst nightmare. And not only that, but someone who had won purple seats in red territory. I won my county legislative seat, which was redrawn to be more red, with 57% of the vote. By getting out and knocking doors and listening to voters and figuring out what they really needed, and then mobilizing them out to the ballot box. And that's what we need to do. I won independents, I won Republicans, I won Democrats, and that's what we need to do again next year. As far as raising funds, my first job out of college was for Emily's List. There is no Emily, it's an acronym. Early money is like yeast. So I knew exactly what was at stake going up against Mike Lawler. There was $42 million spent in this congressional seat last year. 1.7 million from Elon Musk alone. He spent more on Mike Lawler than any other congressional seat in the country. And I think we saw what he paid for. We got Mike Lawler, who his weaknesses are that he has sold us out. He folded like a cheap suit when it came to the salt cap. He again gutted Medicaid, Planned Parenthood, food stamps. We're already seeing food shipments to the regional Hudson Valley Regional Food Bank, which comes down to people in my food pantry, cut in half. And when you talk about the Jewish community in particular, they're going to not be happy that he's cut synagogue funding, that he has stood silently by while DOGE has taken out the part of the Department of Education that enforces anti-Semitism attacks on college campuses. They're going to want someone who actually stands with and votes for all of our communities. And that's me. And again, just someone who has won a Democratic supermajority in a county that Donald Trump won last year is the person you want at the top of this ticket. Thanks.
So again, when I've spoken to so many voters over the past few months, the number one issue continues to be the economy. And it's just something that Mike Lawler is not really addressing. He's hurting the economy. So voters, I mean, as you know, so many of our candidates have been such strong candidates, but they just haven't been the right ones to solve voters' exact problems, which again continues to be the economy. Voters are going to need someone different and new to move on from the status quo, because as we all know, he continues to be very popular. I mean, he's winning by 6 points in a district where Democrats outnumber Republicans 2-1. Voters need someone who's gonna take charge and drive action. And we need someone who's going to be able to grab attention, to aggressively push back against all the crap that the Republicans and Mike Lawler are gonna throw at us. And make the case, aggressively make the case against him. I have never been a quiet backbencher in my entire life, and I don't plan on starting now. Thank you.
John Sullivan.
Working in the FBI, politics really isn't something that comes into the mix, although maybe under Trump 1.0 that changed a bit. But I will say you always focus on the mission and you work with anyone who's willing to work with you. When I went over to Israel for 3 years, not only was it a great experience working to fight against Hamas and Hezbollah, being in the tunnels of Gaza and having the Iron Dome intercept a rocket above my head and run into a store with my son who was in a stroller because stuff still does fall to the ground. But it gave me the understanding of how important it is to be going into those places where maybe we don't always agree, maybe we don't always have the exact same policies in line, but talking with those who can help us build a better future. So the path to victory in this race really is calling Mike Lawler out for all of his mistakes and missteps and purposeful missteps at the direction of Elon Musk and obviously Donald Trump. I think when we look at what's going on right now, in particular, we need to be going to all of the communities who want to be heard. The town halls are just one example. While the district is 2-1 Democrats versus Republicans, we're now seeing that energizing of the base that's really happening where the Democrats are finally getting to see after 3 years what Mike Lawler has been doing in the background. He masquerades as a moderate, as I said, but he's actually really enabling the MAGA agenda. The Medicaid cuts are going to be hurting all of our communities, including the Jewish community that he seems to count on and assume are in his pocket. A lot of the decisions that he's making now, whether it be going against, pretending to be for women's reproductive rights while voting or not taking up action that could be very consequential to whether or not women have access to reproductive health. Mike Lawler has been doing everything wrong, every opportunity he gets the chance to. And so bringing my background experience, talking about this district being one of only 3 left that Kamala Harris won, but a Republican won the congressional seat, is really key. We need to be getting the message out. We need to be listening to people. We need to be understanding and hearing what the problems are. And then we need to call Mike on it every single day, every time he does that misstep, every time he backs up Elon Musk and Donald Trump over the people of this district. And my experience in the FBI and in law enforcement and national security uniquely qualifies me to do that. And from a fundraising perspective, we have been seeing such a groundswell of support and grassroots support across this campaign. I've been really humbled by it and looking forward to continue to use those funds and build those treasure chests so we can work together to ensure that Mike Lawler is no longer a member of Congress in 2027.
Thank you. I think it may be time for a district leader to come up with a question for the candidates. I know that there are some of you that have questions. Yes. Yeah, the microphone's right there.
Yes, I'm from I live in Mount Kisco. Like so many other Democrats, I share the Democratic story. I'm also a girl from the Bronx who's, built through education. That's my husband sold peanuts in the Yankee Stadium and drove a taxi cab to put himself in college. And so thinking about the future, the United States Congress is tough territory. And, kudos to all that you have accomplished thus far. But let's just assume that that you defeat Mike Lawler, that you win a primary, that you defeat Mike Lawler, and you find yourself in Washington, D.C., what is it that you would prioritize or focus on to benefit Congressional District 17? And in this tough environment, how would you work across the aisle to get things done?
Okay, we'll start with you, John.
Well, the very first thing I'll do when I'm a member of Congress is I will take a vote to make Hakeem Jeffries the Speaker of the House. And then right after we get through that business, I'll be having conversations across the aisle with all of the different members, particularly the new members and ones who've only been there for a term or two, and explain to them that in a lot of ways, you know, Mike Waller in the last election went after Democrats for being soft on crime. It's something he's gonna have a hard time doing when I'm standing up there on that debate stage. But I have that background and I can have that conversation with people and talk about bringing common sense solutions to some of these very challenging problems. I think gun violence is something we really do need to focus in on. I think the Congress made a lot of great strides under the Biden administration with some of the different requirements and things that were put onto the gun legislation that was passed, but at the same time, we need to start looking at how we can shrink the government smartly with a scalpel, not a chainsaw, how we can find that way in which we can use the money to rebuild the institutions that Donald Trump and Doge has been cutting. Because to Beth's point earlier, the Department of Education in particular sets standards across this country. My husband, as I mentioned, worked at USAID. All of that funding is gone, those programs are stopping, but then we have other powers like China come in and fill the gap. They're already in places in Africa where USAID was doing their most important work. But they're not just doing it out of the goodness of their heart, they're also asking for things in return, including access to certain systems, whether it be telecoms or otherwise. So we need to do the work to talk with others across the aisle, make it clear the concerns that we have about some of the past policies, and bring it back to an idea of strengthening our national security. Because when China is in Africa and is seen as an ally, the United States is not there and is unable to rely on that soft power and that friendly relationship as we go forward. So it's making Hakeem Jeffries Speaker of the House, and it's doing everything possible to strengthen our national security while also enforcing any additional pieces of the gun violence legislation we could get passed, understanding Donald Trump is still the president in 2027, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I'll give it here that the first order of business has to be to get the speaker's gavel out of Mike Johnson's grubby little hand. And put Congress back to work for the people. And what do I mean by that? This Republican-led House and Republican Congress has completely abdicated its role as our legislative branch of government, handing full power up to Donald Trump when it comes to levying tariffs, when it comes to taking a hatchet to our institutions, and when it comes to dictating what kind of budget they pass. Like, again, the SALT cap, which we all know would have expired at the end of this year. So what do we go in and do on day one? We start putting things back together, but better than before. We know that our institutions haven't always worked for everybody, and that includes the Department of Education, and that just includes the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and that includes the Department of Health and Human Services. We can build something better. And what I'm really excited about is, having worked in campaigns for almost 30 years, I already know a lot of these numbers. I'm so grateful that I was selected to be a delegate to the Democratic National Convention for District 17, serving along Shannon Powell and State Senator Shelley Mayer, and I got to interact with a lot of our sitting members of Congress in New York who are super smart people. I'm so excited to learn with them and collaborate with them. And yes, I do believe in extending a hand across the aisle. I will work with anyone who has a good idea to make our country better. I still believe that that is possible. Compromise doesn't have to be a dirty word. It can mean getting people to do the right thing, because you help them see how it benefits everybody. As I said, people didn't send me to New City to fight with people. They sent me to get things done for my community. And that's the kind of Congresswoman I will be for District 7.
Right.
Well, so the first thing I would want to do is I would stop this idiotic trade war that serves no purpose other than to line Donald Trump's pockets. I mean, it's driving up prices for consumers and is destroying small businesses like my own. We need to foster healthy trade relationships and mutually beneficial trade relationships with other countries, while at the same time bringing in the strategic, vital manufacturing capabilities that are strategic to our national security. And that includes telecom, so phones, semiconductors and chips, and even clean energy. Second, I'm gonna make sure that we put the American consumer ahead of greedy corporations. Because currently prices are going up, not because of any particular cost pressures, but because corporations are being greedy. You know, case in point, these corporations are having record executive compensation and also do $1 billion stock buyback, while these same corporations are the ones that are benefiting from historically low corporate tax rates. Excuse me. And benefited from government contracts. Right now, the considerable weight of the United States government is being thrown around to help Donald Trump and his family. But I'm going to make sure it's being thrown around so that people, the American people, have what they need to feed their families and succeed. Thank you.
Good evening, thanks for doing this. So I'm from Yorktown, here in Westchester. So I've studied my law for a long time. District leader, but I'm an activist involved in anti-law activity. Knocks neighbor's door. He doesn't talk about things you've been talking about. He doesn't say, I'm going to help you with your economic problems, to get kids through school, deal with gun violence. He talks about immigrants or rapists, just like Trump does. He talks about, do you want them moving into your neighborhood? Do you want your tax dollars to support your entitlements? I would like to hear somebody's, how are you going to deal with it?
If you want to start with the commitment plan,
Sorry, so the last part of that question was, how are we gonna deal with him? Or
React.
how are we gonna react? Well, I mean, look, it's shocking. He's very popular. I mean, I come to things like this and he's Satan, you know, and then when I talk to voters, like, he's still pretty popular. So what we need to do is we need to go door to door and point out the things that he's doing. He's doing all these bad things, like you said. He's demonizing immigrants. He's, you know, cutting the social safety net. But we need to come up with solutions. You know, I see him on CNN and he's everywhere. I finally get Elon Musk out of my newsfeed and now I can't get this freaking guy out of it. Yeah. So, I mean, and I watch it and I'm like, oh, you know, like, he's not a sociopath, even though I know he probably is. So it's really like making sure that we bring solutions to people, saying that we're going to invest in jobs in the community. We're going to make student loans affordable for our 18-year-olds who are currently being charged 6%, 8% interest rates. Even though, you know, having a student loan and an educated workforce is a national asset. I want to talk about bringing housing prices down. You know, I recently bought a house and the housing prices are crazy, especially in this community where things are going for, you know, about $600,000, but they're getting 20 bids selling for $1.3 million. I was like, how much can that go up? You know, like, regular families cannot afford these things. So it's really pointing out what our solutions are, because I'm a product of the Democratic solutions. I mean, I grew up, like, I'm a product of all the Democratic priorities that have made me who I am. And I want to make sure that we get the solutions and opportunities to everyone else. Thank you.
So I think to your point about Mike Waller, what he's really good at doing is rehashing Trump's tired old talking points. And if we want to call him out for what he did, if he truly cares about the immigrant crisis that we're seeing in the United States, he could have voted for the bill or forced it to come to the floor during the last Congress when there was a negotiated bipartisan plan. And Donald Trump said he'd rather run on a problem than run on a solution. And Mike Lawler liked that idea too. So it's calling out those types of complete insane ideas. I don't understand the point of wanting to go to Congress, be a member of Congress, to not want to do anything that benefits the American people. It is some sort of weird disorder that is existing right now in our government where people run every day, raise millions of dollars to go and do nothing. And then they hurry up and try to raise money to do it all over again. It's obviously very confusing, but I think the talking points break through, which is why I've started knocking on doors already. We have to play this election differently than we've played the rest, because we've had qualified candidates, we've had great position papers, we've had really good talking points, and we've still lost. We need to connect with all of those voters now. I was speaking with a former retired judge here in Westchester who's a 3-time Trump voter who said, not again, this is not what I wanted, I'm voting for you. So we have to have those conversations and get up close and personal with people before we're asking for their vote. There's something like 11 or something of us, I think was mentioned at the beginning. We need to be having those conversations now because people want to remember who came, who asked for their opinion, and didn't walk away with an ask of that person. So I think it's really important that we are calling out the factual errors of Mike Lawler's talking points. He says he's worried about, whether it be the economic security of the community, but he's taking the money from Elon Musk. So we have to just make sure that we're present and we have to play this election differently, which is why the outreach is so important. And nights like tonight in this forum are really so important because we have to energize all of us in this room to go out there and be echo chambers and voice out the concerns that we have about Mike Lawler and how he's playing off the old same tired talking points.
So, as an elected official for the last decade, I've known Mike Lawler for 8 years. I've known him since he was a town supervisor in Orangetown. And when shout out to Mount Kisco, which has held a couple of wonderful rallies, really powerful rallies. I've been privileged enough to speak, our county legislator, Erica Pierce, here. I've seen her speak. Those are not people who love Mike Lawler and think he's great. There are people who are seeing exactly who Mike Lawler is and who he stands for, which is himself, climbing them on the ladder, Donald Trump and Elon Musk, who spent $1.7 million to keep him exactly where he is, doing exactly what he's doing, which is putting billionaires on the back and tax breaks for them on the backs of working people like us. And what I'll say is that Mike Lawler under Donald Trump looks a lot different. He has a record that he can't run away from, and we're not going to let him. Mention of reproductive rights was brought up. It is outrageous that my daughter is going off to college this fall with fewer rights than I did in 1990 when I went off to college. That is who Mike Lawler is, and not only did he say, "Oh, it's just it's New York law." No thanks to him. He has a virulently anti-choice record that goes all the way back through his time in the assembly. He has stood and fundraised for crisis pregnancy centers, sham operations that push dangerous and unproven methods that you can reverse your medication abortion on poor, unsuspecting women who don't have better choices put in front of them. This is who Mike Lawler is. I'm an opposition researcher by trade. I'm going to nail that record to him every single day, so that by the time people go to the ballot box in next November, they know that he slashed Medicaid, slashed food stamps, cut Planned Parenthood funding, gave tax breaks that ballooned our budget by $3.7 trillion. What happened to the party of fiscal responsibility? Give me a break. He's trying to take a victory lap on salt. You ask me, he just stepped on a ring.
We have another question.
My name is Christine Clayton. I'm a district leader in Sleepy Hollow. And I oftentimes Sleepy Hollow people think Democratic stronghold, whatever, but I live in a neighborhood where we have, it's quite purple actually. And we've got lots of Brooklyn transplants, but we also got people who put big old banners out for Trump and kept them up till about January. You know, I even changed them for Christmas, put a new, Trump banner up. At any rate, so my question along the same lines is, I appreciate the messages that you're speaking to tonight about Lawler. I'd like to get a little bit more granular and also pose a hypothetical to you. I know we need to knock doors. I knocked a lot of doors for Mondaire. I put a lot of money into. We knocked more doors than we did, previous year the previous time when he lost, and didn't do anything. And so I think you're onto something, John, that it's got to be different. So my question is, how could you speak more granularly, like about the kinds of communities and how you're going to reach those communities? And here's my hypothetical. You win the primary, fully funded to your dreams. How are you going to use those resources specifically to win?
You know, why would that and why would start with that?
Thanks, and that's such a good question. I mean, I'm a different kind of candidate for sure, so that's what is different about me. I think going up against a mom who's worked in politics for a long time, who's from Rockland County, who knows how to win in red territory, who's won a purple seat with 57% of the vote, and who also got out and knocked a lot of doors. I didn't show up at my first Clarkstown Democratic Committee meeting with a resume. I showed up rolling up my sleeves and asking what I could do. Like many of you, February isn't groundhogs and Valentine's, it's petition signatures and long days going through housing complexes, making sure you get every last signature and close it before, so you can finish your list before you have to close out BAM. And so I do know how to run a win, but I recognize we have to do something differently. Certainly my media plan will be different. Every kid on my block with Mike Lawler's ads backwards and forwards was in their gaming apps. He was on YouTube. I was once at a church dinner where somebody was obviously trying to check the Yankees score, and that one of the ads went off and everyone turned around. I mean, it was really everywhere. So I think we have to be smarter about where we spend. I will go and speak with anyone, any podcast, any news channel. I'm not leaving anyone on the table when it comes to getting out my message of why I will fight for the people of CD 17 while Mike Lawler fights for himself. And so that's, once I'm the nominee, what I plan to do. I feel like there was a first part of your question. I skipped right to the end. Was there a first part? Oh, the communities we're reaching out to. Thank you. Yes, and thank you very much. Yes. That's why I brought this. Yes. So I represent a district that's really a microcosm of CD 17. I've got historically Black communities in Nyack. I've got cops and firefighters. I've got, Valley Cottage, which is a lot of teachers, and newly naturalized citizens. We've got a vibrant Asian community. So I really, hear what you're saying about, how Mike Lawler's fear mongering and Donald Trump's fear mongering is tearing at the fabric of our communities. I will go to every community and really listen to what they want. This is a very diverse district, and what works for Putnam County may not work for Palisades or, I think the river towns. So really figuring out what they need and how we, achieve policies that work for us.
Yeah, so I've spoken to so many voters over the past few months. And I will go on any sort of news, any sort of social media. I mean, I'm good at social media. I think what's really what we need to do is we need to show that we are someone who's not a career politician, someone who can actually solve the problems that this district has. Again, one of them being the economy. I want to talk to teenagers, people who are going off to college, and they're just signing away their lives. Like the average cost of college right now is $60,000 to $100,000 per year at a private school. You know, so like, we need to talk to each group and tell them about the democratic policies that we're bringing to the table and things that Mike Lawler is not doing. I think just having a new type of candidate and making sure that our money is spent wisely, whether that's social media, whether that's print, whether that's going on any kind of, you know, I've been on CNN, I've been on NBC before, I've been on all the major news networks in my business life. So someone who's be able to grab attention and really show that they're different, and that's how we're going to win this district. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think to your point, we need to be speaking to everyone everywhere. And I think that to your hypothetical, that when I'm the nominee, one of the benefits of having such a large, diverse group of candidates is that we can all work together for that nominee. I pledge that whoever the nominee is, if it's not me, I will do everything possible to make sure that their message is getting out, because at the end of the day, we do a good fight and then to come up short again. We have to, as a Democratic Party, not continue to infight. And we also need to do something different than we did in 2024, not necessarily here, but we have to explain what we're for, not just what we're against. We have to start running on things again. The Democrats used to be the party of ideas and the party for the working American. We were the ones who came up with ideas and explained how we could bring the American dream to your doorstep. Like I said, I'm the first person in my family to go to college and get a degree. It's not because my parents didn't want to go. My mom wanted to be a special education teacher. There was just no money. And now that opportunity is not necessarily existing for every American. So we need to have those 3-4 key ideas, key tenets that we're going to go to every community and talk about and share. And then we're going to work together as a party to do everything possible to make sure that Mike Lawler is not sitting in that seat on January 2027. Because 2 more years of Mike Lawler is a lifetime when it comes to the opportunities that our kids and that our families are going to suffer. We've talked a lot up here about everything he's against, everything he's done to hurt us, but giving him more time to further cement the policies of the Trump administration is just not something we can tolerate. I get it, we are all exhausted. This has been a really long time since the golden escalator ride. But we have to keep fighting and doing everything possible, going to those communities and talking to people with them when we knock on the door, knowing there's a 50 or 51% chance they are going to disagree with us. But we have to stand there and have the conversation. We have done too often gone into our little areas and kind of our own little cocoons. My son is 6 and I worked in the FBI, so I didn't have a lot of social media, but I will tell you, even I got the Mike Lawler ad somehow. And so there is something about new media. All of us out here have been in so many different worlds of the media realm since we've launched our candidacies and started talking about this race. We're going to turn those on and we are going to amp them up. Because to your point, if we're funded to our wildest dreams, then our wildest dreams are really the limit. And we will do everything possible to get our message out, and we'll work together to make sure the Democrats win this seat in 2026.
Thank you again for all of you for doing this. And I also want to thank the committee for putting this together. Notice we have people filming this entire event. We are live streaming to Zoom. We have not carried anyone out. You know, when we talk about this is what democracy looks like, this is what democracy looks like. So let's hear it. So like one of the candidates up there, I'm a county legislator. You don't get into county government to get famous, certainly don't get into county government to get rich, but you get into county government to get things done. And I also sit on the National Association of Counties, so I know that Republican and Democrats together are very distraught with what is happening right now. So that speaks well for going across the aisle, and talking about cuts is really important. You guys have been doing a great job of it. I would like, though, for each of you to talk about either the incredible impacts that we are seeing on health and or environment, since they are entwined, because those are really important issues which are being left off the table. We are, all of us, less healthy than we were even a few months ago. And so, and within this community, whether you want to talk about health or environment,
infrastructure as well is really related to those issues. And if you can't, as a congressperson, deliver to help communities with infrastructure to prevent and keep people safe and healthy, we're off the trouble. I can't do that. And it's not doing that. So I have to make sure.
Thank you. Nick, would you like to,
Sure, well. So. My parents, they're retired now. And now their bills between rent, between healthcare, between cars and food. I mean, they can't pay their bills. And healthcare, their healthcare is one of the driving costs of where they put their money and increasing every year. My father, unfortunately, got sick last year, passed away a few months ago. And even with Medicare, you know, it's 80%, but my parents, they still have to pay the 20%. And now, you know, he was sick and in the hospital for like several months. I mean, my mom's getting bills now for $20,000, $30,000, even though she has Medicare. And she can't pay those bills. I mean, luckily, she has 3 kids who are able to chip in, and we love doing that if we have to. But we shouldn't have to do that. You know, we do live in the wealthiest country in the world. We have the smartest people, but we have the worst healthcare. And it's because the healthcare system is broken. It's because the incentives are not aligned. Healthcare, the providers, they don't get paid to keep you healthy. They get paid when you're sick and to make you better. So there is no, they don't want to do preventative care. We also have an insurance industry that takes all the money and then they continue to deny legitimate claims. When I'm our congressperson, I'm going to make sure that the incentives, especially with healthcare, are aligned so that to keep our people healthier. And I'm going to make sure that prescription costs come down and that prescription companies cannot charge more in the US than they do abroad. It's something really crazy. Like we pay something like 25 times what other, even industrial countries pay for the same medications. So when I'm in Congress, I will focus on healthcare because that's something that's really near and dear to my heart. My husband is an executive at a medical device company, and he has lots of thoughts on this. We want to talk about this after. And thank you.
Thank you very much. So Legislator Pierce and I have talked a little bit about this, that, you know, as Donald Trump and Elon Musk, you know, smash up our systems and rip away healthcare with Mike Lawler's, you know, aiding and abetting every step of the way, it's local officials who are left to clean up the mess. And healthcare is a hugely important issue to me as also a 2-time cancer survivor who knows what it's like to fight with your insurance company. It's basically a second job when you're trying to get the care you need to survive. But I'm going to nerd out a little bit on the environment, if that's okay, legislator, because you know, that's something where I can not only talk about 3 things where Mike Lawler has really fallen short, where you know, what I'd like to do, but I don't even have to talk on my wish list. I can talk about what I'm doing right now, what I've been doing since I've been in the county legislature. So you may have seen in the news that Mike Lawler, along with defunding Medicaid during that first budget vote, clawed back $33 million in community funding projects. And that included a wastewater treatment in Pleasantville and another water treatment facility in Putnam County. You know, this is, you know, this in Mount Pleasant, it was water that went to the high school and the hospital. So, you know, not exactly where you want forever chemicals going into people's bodies. And so, you know, these are the issues that we have to turn around and fix as county legislators. And so I'm proud to be the chair of the Water Task Force, newly reinvigorated, and then the chair of the Environmental Committee for the legislature as well. I ran on establishing a climate action plan for Rockland County, and I'm proud that, a couple of weeks ago, we passed the funding, excuse me, a few months ago, we passed the funding to get our climate smart communities up and going. And I've worked across the river already. I've spoken at the beautiful Croton Landing last summer, talking about forever chemicals in the water. I've gone and spoken in front of Mike Lawler's office about the Congress's attempts to get rid of the let out of water rule, the Republicans in the House. Clean water goes to the crux of what we love about the Hudson Valley. It's tourism, it's our economy, it's our health, and it's a problem that we have to deal with, and that I have been dealing with, and it's really directly related to infrastructure. Because we in Rockland, we have a international water company, Veolia. And so when they put in new systems to get forever chemicals out of the water, our rates are going to go up. And so that becomes an additional cost, right? We keep talking about how unaffordable it already is to live in the Hudson Valley. This is another cost that we're going to be stuck with. And I'll work to restore the funding cuts. We'll need to do that, like the FEMA cuts that have halted the restoration of the Upper Maple Dam here in Westchester. So these are very real problems that, again, Mike Waller has done nothing to address, that I'm already working to address as a county legislator, and that I'll make priority one.
Well, thank you for your question. I think it was Tip O'Neill who said all politics is local. I could be getting that quote wrong, but I think that when we start talking about what Congress can do, it's really easy to get very macro, and then it is on county legislators to kind of clean up the mess and pick up the pieces. So I absolutely recognize that. But I think to the questions you had, as someone who also had cancer, I think Beth and I can agree that the healthcare system is just completely broken when it comes to how you go through the process of making sure you're getting the appropriate care that you need, regardless of whether or not you can pay for it. And as we're seeing these Medicaid cuts that are coming forward, talking with some of our key leaders of some of the hospital systems here, they're still going to get treated, but at the end of the day, those costs are going to get passed on to the rest of us because we have to cover the basic expenses of treating someone, even if Medicaid is no longer existing. So that is a concern that I have, that healthcare is just going to continue to get less and less affordable. Looking at the exchange right now, I think the rate for a family of 4 is something around $2,000 a month. We might as well just go back to the days of COBRA. I mean, because it's getting so unaffordable that you're choosing really between eating and paying rent, or eating and having your healthcare. I mean, it's really that much of a choice. At the same time, when it comes to the environmental concerns, obviously, I think to the point of forever chemicals, I heard a study recently that we all have enough microplastics in our body that we have the equivalent of a plastic spoon and microplastics, which is concerning that could even be put out as a fact, even if it is true. But that just shows how there's so many ways in which our water and our air is polluted with so many things we're just unaware of because of all the climate regulations and things that are being slashed right now in this administration. To your point, we are getting less healthy, and there will be long-term health effects of those environmental concerns. When I was in the FBI, one of the teams that I helped run was the environmental team. And it was the team that worked in South America looking at all of the deforestation that was happening to build out some of these mineral mines, and then the trafficking of endangered species for profit, particularly coming through South and Central America. And you would think, why is the FBI involved in that? But that money was going to then fund drugs, and it was going to fund crime here in the United States. So I think when we talk about environment, it's obviously clean air and clean water. My water was just turned off the other day. After a couple hours of it being off, the brown came out a few hours later that we had to flush through. It was very concerning that that's in the pipes every day. But I also think that we need to think about the environment as also a security risk, because as we allow other countries and pull out of things like the Paris Climate Accords, and we allow other countries to deregulate parts of their environment, they are also then giving us the concern that those funds and that money could be coming in a way to negatively impact the United States as well, particularly from a security perspective.
Whoever's next. Please speak directly into the microphone for the people on the Zoom here.
Hi, my name is Karen Conti, and I'm district leader of Middlesboro. one of the more rural places in our district, not including Dutchess County. I'm listening to everyone talking about macro issues, fears, and Mike Lawler, you know, having those pictures. His mail was, it was really dark. And I canvass a lot. I walk around my neighborhood and other people's neighborhoods. And talk to all kinds of people. Probably 2/3 of the people don't really understand what's going on. They just, you know, see the big headlines, you know, you're in the car dealer, and what's on TV, Fox News. They think that's real. And the rest of the people are terrified. And things are only going to get worse. We're the pass-through money, you know, for our little town. Our hometown budget is like almost $15 million, the highest it's ever been. Practically no money, but we get pass-through money from the state. An ambulance or a truck or, you know, tractor or to, you know, clean the building and the building's full. So all out throughout this district, people are depending on pass-through money from the federal government, the police department, the schools. Our district, we pay a lot of our own taxes, but most of the district in Westchester, in Yorktown, you know, only pays 20%. And Yonkers, White Plains pays probably 40%. So what are we going to do between now and, well, primary day and then election day? Like, what are you going to literally say to when you're on their doorsteps, walking with me through my neighborhood, and they have questions? I am scared. I can't pay this. My kid's class size just leapt up because, you know, we don't have enough teachers. What are we going to say to these people? And telling them about what's happening in Washington, what you're going to do. They need to know that you understand our community and the communities around us, and reassure them that you can't guarantee to do something, but you understand what position they're in. Some of our communities are very wealthy, but many of our communities aren't. And, you know, like you're talking, how are people going to pay their bills? Like, what are you going to do when food stamps runs out, or, you know, there's no Medicaid and your kid is sick or you're sick? So you're here.
Yeah, thank you. Like, you want to handle that?
Well, I look forward to walking around your community with you and hearing those concerns firsthand, because I think it's absolutely true. I think that the point that I was making earlier of knocking on doors now and just talking with people before we haven't asked for a vote or support, but just understanding what's really concerning people. It's important that people feel seen and that they really are heard. I think that to your point, you know, right now it's economically, it is scary, and Congress, if it didn't abdicate a lot of its authority, could fix these things, but one of us, being one member of 435 people, cannot magically wave a magic wand to change all of Washington and allow the states to receive more funds and there to be more pass-through money. But what we can do is be active in our communities now, making sure that they're seen, being heard, and making sure that we're doing everything possible to give back now. I think that it's really important that as a community, we're starting to see so many different things pop up, whether it be food drives or other things where we can give to those who are in particular need. And I think we need to do more of that now. You know, as we were talking, county legislators have to pick up a lot of the slack, but we have to do everything possible to make sure that we are helping our communities today and making sure that they're heard. You know, working in the FBI, you work with a lot of different people across the country in a lot of different towns and cities. But what you find is that everybody really just wants to be able to make sure that they can make a living and give their family a future. And right now, people are really scared, and it's terrible that this is America, and that people are scared whether or not they can give their kids a meal the next day. We don't need to go back to the days where people are worried about every single day whether or not there's going to be food on the table. And so in order to stop that, those of us who have the ability to give more now, before it's completely not politics related, but it's just humanity related. And we do everything possible now to be investing in our communities as humans who are giving back and making sure they have the resources they need. It's looking after your neighbor. And then when we get to Congress, when one of us gets there, hopefully it's me, we're going to bring those stories to Washington, and we're going to talk about them in a very common sense sort of way. I think what we've seen between Cory Booker and even future Speaker Jeffries, doing those sit-ins, having those talks for a whole day on live stream, just talking about the issues that are impacting people. Anyone could go up to them in Washington and share their concerns. We need to bring more of that back to Washington. And I think involving the communities now is really important, that we can make sure we're bringing the right messages to Washington and doing everything possible for our communities now, because there is a long time between now and the election.
Everybody in this room, especially the kids and the parents, remembers that day when administrators called that school was gonna shut down because of the pandemic. And yeah, I'm seeing some heads nodding. And, you know, I was serving on the school board. I was coming up on the last few months of my first term on the school board. And yes, we were, you know, talking with all of our teachers, talking to all our building leads, you know, making sure that kids had the technology. Luckily, we've gone one-to-one technology. So every kid had a laptop, making sure that there were hotspots in areas where there wasn't reliable broadband. But I actually called our local community center, Alex Center. And I said, how are the kids gonna eat tomorrow? Because I was a Girl Scout leader. I was a PTA mom. I was a volunteer in all the nonprofits I told you about. And I knew that 42% of kids at Nyack Public Schools relied on school lunches and breakfasts to have food during the day. And the head of Nyack Center said, come in at 9 a.m. tomorrow. And so we showed up at the next morning and we called Aramark, our food service provider, and worked out a schedule for them to come in and deliver bagged lunches. So that, and figured out how to get the word out to families through our family resource centers, that they could come to Nyack Center if they qualified for free lunch and breakfast and get their meals, which we then prepped and bagged and distributed. We didn't know about masks or gloves or social distancing. We were just trying to get the kids. And
that was huge.
oh, thanks. Let's begin it. Nyack wasn't. I'll tell you where to go. The leader you're going to be in, being immersed in your community and loving this community as much as I do is what's driving me to this work. And being a mom, right, we know how to problem solve and we think 3 steps ahead. And so, and then we figured out that, you know, once the kids were getting taking their lunches home, the parents were coming too. Okay, so let's realize that, you know, a lot of these are frontline workers, hospital workers, grocery stores are, you know, running out of stocks and food prices are going up and people don't have as much money. So we built a food bank from scratch. I would literally put those signups on Facebook. I would drive around and select food from people's houses, and the entire, what was the recreation room of Nyack Center became a ad hoc food pantry. So that parents could then come in and get the extras that they needed to get through the weekends, mostly, you know, shelf stable stuff. Then our local baker started donating brioches every day. I could cry. This is a family a community that really came together for our families and made sure that people did not go hungry. People started sewing masks, so then we became a mask distribution center. This is how communities care for each other while we wait for government to catch up. Our leader of People to People jokes all the time when people say, oh, Diane, you do God's work. And she says, we do the government's work for them. And so, yes, when Congress takes back the power of the purse, we will refund these, we will restore the funding to these programs that people depend on. But in the meantime, it's being in the communities and looking out for each other so that people know when I get to Congress, that I know what they need and that I will fight for them, because I always have.
Yeah.
Well, and those are great answers. I think those are so important. I think what I found is that people, when you knock on doors, telling people and knowing that that you're coming from where they are as well is really important. How Donald Trump, a man who lives in a golden penthouse, was able to convince working class people that he actually cares about them is, I have no idea how, mostly through lies, but you know, what we really need is to tell people that and show them that we are like them. You know, we don't live in some mansion. We have the same problems. You know, I grew up in the Bronx. There were 5 of us. We grew up in an 800 square foot apartment with 2 bedrooms. When I was born, we didn't have space. So my parents took a pantry and a linen closet and combined it. And that was my bedroom, 2 closets. And we joked that I'm a gay man, so that I literally grew up in a closet. My mom doesn't like that joke, but. And knowing that, my family, we didn't go on fancy vacations, we didn't have a car for a long time. My parents weren't able to save, and knowing that, and even now, my parents, they still can't pay all their bills. Really being empathetic and showing people that we are the same, we have the same problems, and we want to solve the problems for not just them, but for ourselves and our families as well. I think that would be super powerful. Thank you.
One more question. Speak into the mic, please.
I'm Ann Golden. I live in Briarcliff Manor, which is part of Mount Pleasant. I'm a district leader in the Mount Pleasant Democratic Committee. Where I live, it's a very blue area. It is so blue that people basically have gone to sleep. They don't know. My friends ask me, oh, there's an election? Who's running? What is it? They are not paying attention. And then there are the ones who can't look at the news and can't read the news because it makes them so depressed. And so they don't know what's going on either. How are you going to fire people up? Go ahead and yell at them. They need to be yelled at. How are you going to do this?
I'm not a big proponent of yelling, although my 6-year-old may disagree and say that I'm pretty good at it. But I will say that to the point that we were saying earlier about making sure that we were talking to people who don't agree with us, we can't forget the people who do agree with us as well. We have to be knocking on every door and going to every place possible. I think to some of the strategies we talked about earlier, making sure we're on social media and some of these other platforms, that's really great for maybe the younger quote generation. But for really everybody in our community, especially in those really blue districts, it's really easy to kind of just sit back and feel like, I'm okay here. I'm not going to move, I'm not going to worry too much about it. And it is exhausting, everything that's going on. So I have so many friends who have just disconnected. And they're like, I'm good, I don't need to know. I'm not that person. I need to know and I need to plan and prepare. But I think it is going out and meeting them where they are. It's standing at the train station or bus station in the morning. It is going to the supermarket and standing outside the front door, but it's also knocking on doors and having volunteers and others understand what we're fighting for as a Democratic Party. Because at the end of the day, having those conversations now is what matters. While there's 11 of us in this race, we're having those conversations in advance of it being down to one person. So that way we can hit every single door in this district before it ever comes down to a primary. And we can be getting people involved and engaged, and they will be more knowledgeable on who's running. I mean, at the end of the day, there's 11. It can't even believe Suzanne's able to keep track. It's like having a full classroom of students. But I do think that at the end of the day, we have to make sure that we're sharing the message that we all agree with. And we're talking to people and saying, we need you to get engaged, attention. Even if it's just one person to tell a neighbor, hey, we have these people running, this election's coming up, it's so important. Mike Lawler has been hurting our communities. We haven't felt it necessarily directly here, but it's hurting a lot of us in this district. That catches on, and it really gets people inspired and motivated. And the more you start seeing of us and we're out and about and we're, taking the summer months to engage with everybody, I think we're going to see some of that natural just awakening that occurs. We just went through a really tough election period and a whirlwind few first 100,000 days of this administration that just never ends. And so I think now people are finally getting that point of kind of poking their heads up, saying what's going on, and we have to be there to kind of pull them out of that hole and make sure that they know how important the next 18 months is really going to be for this district.
Well, I have the same problem. I have my, solid Dem friends who are pissed, but also just tune out of the news now as well because there's just too much going on. And then I have my partner's family. He grew up in Utah and they just watch Fox News all the time. Sorry, Sven. And they have no idea really what's happening. They're like, oh, everything's great, like Donald Trump is delivering on his promises. So it really is about communication. It's knocking on the doors, it's being everywhere, being on all over the news, being on social media where young people and, you know, even like people my age and older, now my parents go on social media, you know, it's like, that's where people are. It's just communicating to everyone, getting out there and making sure they actually know what's going on and they're not in their, you know, in their Fox News bubble, but they actually know that, you know what, like your social security, you take social security, but it's being cut, you know? And they're doing all these things that people don't know about because it's not being publicized in the best way. So going everywhere and communicating to people what's going on. I haven't spoken to a single person that when you talk about social security cuts and all the cuts to the social safety net, people get pissed. Like not a single person has been like, oh, that's great, you know, like let's cut everyone's social security. So it really is about communication, and I'm out there, and I know everyone else is out there as well. Well, 11 of us, and people do hear the message, and they do want to get involved.
Beth.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your question. I live in a pretty blue area too. The village of Nyack is pretty blue. But when you look at this district, you know, and the fact that it went for Joe Biden by 10 points in 2020, by Kamala Harris by less than half a point, and Kamala Harris still won. It's clear it's not enough just to get people excited to vote. We have to get them excited to vote for Democrats. And I think in this last election, people just really forgot what makes us Democrats and what makes us proud to wear that blue jersey. That we stand for strong public schools and clean air and water and safe neighborhoods and reproductive freedom. And, you know, got lost in other issues. And we saw, you know, turnout in Jewish precincts especially drop. We have to come back together and remember that yes, we have to fight back, but what do we have to fight for? We have to fight for these young people sitting in the audience. We have to get them excited about voting. You know, they've never really seen democracy really function, right? Barack Obama, my daughter was one when Barack Obama was elected, and it kind of, you know, has been dysfunctional and divisive since. And so we have to get out as a party and remind people that we are the party of the working people. And we are the party for all the issues I just talked about. And that's what I try to do as a public official, again, standing up for our nonprofits, standing up for clean air and water, standing up for public safety, standing up for our kids. And if we can get everyone to remember who we are, that's how we get them out to the polls. That's how we flip this seat, because the power of the people is greater than the people in power. And that's what we'll remind everyone.
Thank you all. Before we hear the closing statements from our candidates, next week in Yorktown, we'll be hearing from Jessica Ryman, Peter Chatsky, Kate Conley, and Jeremy Saland. And this will be at where Bruce, in Lee, right? Right. So love to see some of you there. And now we are going to have closing statements in the opposite order that we began. Nick Porfilio.
I'm Nick Porfilio, and I'm running because I believe the government has a place in our lives. I'm living proof that the government and the programs that the very people in this room and the people who have preceded you have built over the past 100 years, it works. Democratic policies and programs work. They just do. My vision for America is to lead the government towards our core democratic policies that help the most. The things that have made this country the one thing people around the world have aspired to for hundreds of years. And we actually have to do the things we say. I am not a natural politician. I speak with my hands almost exclusively. And my partner, who grew up in a quiet Mormon family, says I often have too much passionate Italian energy and I curse too much. But I reluctantly become a politician because I don't see enough people, especially at the national level, fighting for what we believe in, to offer people like me and our future generations the opportunities that have completely transformed my family's lives from a farm half a world away to daring to dream to enter the halls of power of the United States Congress. That's the American dream, and I think that's something worth fighting for. I'm Nick Porfilio. I enter this race and humbly ask you to get to know me. Hopefully one day you might even vote for me. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, a huge thank you to the wonderful Bedford Democratic Chair, Michael Minard, for moderating. Thanks to Bruce Campbell for organizing these important forums so that you can get to know all of us. Thank you to our intrepid chair, Suzanne Berger, for getting us all together here tonight on this welcome stormy night. You know, I've been traveling and speaking across this district, and one thing has become very clear, that we're in the fight of our political lives, in the fight for our democracy and our country. Like you, just after the 2024 election, I picked myself up, I dusted myself off, I ate a lot of chocolate, and then my phone started to ring. I heard from fellow elected officials, Democratic Party leaders, friends, and neighbors that they wanted to see a candidate who knew how to campaign, who could win Rockland County and bring Jewish voters back into the Democratic fold. They believed I was that candidate, and so I stepped up to run. As we've discussed here tonight, we can't stop Donald Trump's dangerous agenda unless we take back the House. And there is no path to taking back the House without winning New York 17. And we've seen that not just anybody can beat Mike Lawler. As a Rockland County legislator, a longtime Clarkstown Democratic Committee member, a Jewish community leader, a resident of this community for 20 years, I know how to run and win in the Hudson Valley. And I've not only won my own campaigns, but supported candidates up and down the ticket, ultimately, as I said, winning the first ever Democratic supermajority in Rockland County history, in a county that Donald Trump won in 2024. I know what it's going to take to go up against Mike Lawler in his own backyard. I'm the only Democrat in this race who's beaten Republicans in tough districts, built real grassroots coalitions, and delivered results in divided government. That's what it's going to take to win New York 17, retake our House majority, and make sure that Mike Lawler, who doesn't represent our values, no longer represents us in Congress. Thank you.
Well, I also want to thank Bruce and Michael and Suzanne and all of you for coming out, because it really means so much this early in the race to have you all here, and appreciate your questions. I think that, you know, one of the benefits of doing it early enough with district leaders is that you get the tough questions sometimes too, which is really important. So I mean, let's face it, Donald Trump, if I could borrow a little bit from my law enforcement background, is robbing us of all that we are as a country, and Mike Lawler is the one driving the getaway car. But who is really paying the price? At the end of the day, it's our seniors who are seeing their retirement savings dwindle. It's all of our families who are worried about losing healthcare because of the Medicaid cuts. It's our families, all of us, who are paying higher prices at the store because of silly trade wars. They don't care about the price of goods, let alone those of us who are paying for those higher goods. It's all of the kids who cannot believe that we have an administration that won't even say climate change, let alone do something about it. And at the end of the day, it's parents like all of us that we talked about who are appalled that this Congress, Mike Lawler and the Republicans, seem to accept gun violence as just a foregone conclusion in America. This country was once seen as a shining beacon of democracy, and I'm really afraid that if we continue down this path, we're going to descend into the darkness of dictatorship. So we need somebody who's going to pull us back from that cliff, who's going to hold Donald Trump accountable, and who's going to do everything possible to keep our country safe and this district safe. It's what I've done my entire career, from going after drug traffickers, insurrectionists, terrorists, and even gangs across this country. So I've taken on some pretty tough people, much tougher than Mike Lawler and Donald Trump. But I understand the job of protecting a country is not that easy either. So even with everything going on, I'm not giving up, because I still have hope. I still believe in America. I still believe in this democracy that I've spent my career fighting for is bigger than one party or one president. I still think that this is an amazing country where the first kid in his family to go to college can make an opportunity for his son to go too. This is still a country of patriots and public servants who are fighting for the America of our dreams. So while Donald Trump, Mike Lawler, and other cronies have a lot of power, they don't have nearly as much power as we do sitting here in this room. Because the real power of change is power that comes from the communities like ours. You don't have to be in the FBI to protect America. You just have to be a person who's willing to stand up and fight for it. I'm in that fight, and I hope you'll join me.
Yeah. Good evening, thank all of our speakers, and I also want to thank Brian. Brian is our. He's the one who's delivering this event to the public at large, so thank you all for coming, and we hope you can come to the others as well.